Well, welcome to Your Practice Evolution. This is the six course master course that parallels and goes along with your Blue IQ. But more importantly, this course is really designed to help the transition of going from a doctor, a provider, an office manager to really a business owner, a practice owner. And how many of you really have to admit that getting out of school, going in and creating a practice, you didn't really know what you were getting into? can can we all kind of admit that we kind of got in over our heads? You know, a good example of this is I take a lot of youth camping. I volunteer for a youth group, and my boys are in it, and I love it. It's such a great chance to get outdoors and be with the kids. And one of the things that we always do is when we're headed out camping, we take a cooler, and then I always kind of watch the kids as we do this because I give them this option. We buy the ice and we buy the drinks, and I wait to see what do they put in first. And inevitably, they always try to put the ice in first. And I have to stop them. And I say, if you put the ice in first, then how do you get the drinks into the ice? But if we put the drinks in first and then pour the ice kind of filters down, surrounds the drinks and makes them a lot colder. You can fit a lot more drinks into the cooler, because otherwise what happens is you put the ice in, it fills up the whole cooler, then you try to put the drinks on top and they can't get down into the ice. And that is a lot like our lives, and that is a lot like our businesses, our practices. Is we get so busy with the daily activities of busyness that we forget to put in the foundational systems, the drinks, before we start filtering in all of the busy stuff that happens in our lives. And the reality is that we're all busy. And in order to go as fast as we need to go to make a successful practice, if we're so busy putting in the busyness, then we can't go very fast. We can't fit very many drinks into the cooler. So this course is to help you get your systems in place. And then everything else takes care of itself. And this first course, this Master This and the Rest Will Follow, actually is all about you. We have to talk about you before we can get to the systems. So as we go through this, I really want you to, first of all, see an overview of the course and what we're going to be going through in each one of these, because each one's going to build upon the other. And then we'll tie this all together with some homework. You're going to have homework at the end of each course and things that need to be completed. And we're going to go on a journey here. And the first course today is all about mindset. It's all about vision, core values, your ideal new patient, what you want to spend your life engaging in, and then of course culture, and how culture becomes the engine that drives all the other systems. So it's crucial that you become a master at these. And I think we're going to cover some things today that hopefully throughout the rest of the time after this course, before the next course, it triggers some thoughts and some growth and some development, because you get this right, I promise you the rest of the things will follow. Because after this, week 2, we're going to connect your marketing and sales systems, but that ties into mindset and some of the systems that we're going to go over. So it's very vital that we have that in place before we start sprinkling in the systems, the core systems, because then that dives into the core systems. You're now ready to understand the core systems that have to be in place. When the core systems are balanced and flowing, then it's like driving a car with round wheels instead of square wheels. You can't go very fast with square wheels. And too many of you are trying to ramp up your practices with square wheels. You don't have the systems in place to handle that amount of stress on the vehicle. Week 4 is then hiring and training and onboarding. Well, if we have the culture in place, if we have the core value in place, we have the vision in place, then it makes it a heck of a lot easier attracting the right people to help you build that vision. So that's week 4. Week 5 is what we call production rhythm. We can start picking up the pace. We can start accelerating the growth of the practice. And that is centered around 4 key meetings. There's a 5th, that we'll introduce actually in week 6. But these are the 4 crucial key meetings that actually allow the practice to go. We then engage into office manager training because we need help and we need really good people to help us drive the vision. And then, of course, week 6, we want profitability. We want growth. We want bonus systems that work. And it's one of the biggest questions I get as a consultant all the time. What are bonus systems that work? And we're going to go over that with you. So that's the overview. You don't want to miss any of these. These are so vital to your future success. And I want to take a second and share with you my why I'm doing this. Because when I set out to build Blue IQ, I really had no idea how much work this was going to be, building software, building training systems. I mean, I had built a lot of systems prior to this because of successful practices and doing consulting with other practices. And so the systems really came together very nicely. I had incredible mentors myself that helped me really identify and refine these. But really what I've identified as why I love this so much is because what drives me is helping you become successful. And that's really where we analyze psychology and our why. What I've seen in our professions and in the provider lifestyle is this evolution to not knowing what we're becoming. We graduate and become a doctor and become treating patients and don't really understand how much it takes out of us, like how much we have to give every day to our patients and our team, that all of a sudden our personal lives begin to sacrifice a little bit and get out of balance. And when things become out of balance and we're not meeting the bills and we feel the weight of overhead and we're stuck and we don't know how to get out of that. And the hardest thing about that is when we feel inside our true potential and we're not getting there, that's what we call conflict. And living your life in conflict is brutal. It's brutal. And I might get a little emotional through this course because I don't want you to live in conflict. I want your life to be beautiful. I want it to be everything you've ever dreamed of. And there's some key psychology that we're going to go through today that might be why you're getting stuck. It's things that I've identified of why I was getting stuck and why I've now worked with literally over 1,000 providers. And I'm watching these key patterns happen. And so just real quickly before we just start diving into this, this is the path. And some of you have seen this. If you haven't seen this, you kind of need to identify this, because as you know, when we come out as new graduates or go into business for the first time, a lot of us aren't trained on how to be good associates or good practice owners, like owning their own practice. And there's key things in place that need to be in place in order for that to be successful. We don't end up at the top of the mountain by accident. We have to plan the journey, the roadmap. So Practice Evolution is all designed on training associates to become the best associates they can be. And if that's the desire and the level that somebody finds that fulfills them at the highest level, then that's where Practice Evolution wants to help get you there. If you want to take the step out of being now a doctorpreneur, which is a practice owner, then that's what you're in right now. This is Practice Evolution. The 6-week mastery course, and then we'll talk about where we go after this. Now, running a practice now as the only provider is a completely different story than running a practice with another provider. And there's a system for that, and you have to have certain things in place before you're healthy. I know from working with some of you that you tried to add an associate way before your practice was ready to have an associate. So there's a system for that. And then taking this where you now exit the practice, potentially exit patient care, and have a couple associates. Now you may have 20 doctors working for you. You may have two doctors working for you. You may have one long-term. It's this concept of, in order to really exit successfully, you really need two associates or two doctors to drive enough production in the practice to do that, unless you've got funding in place to help you open up multiple locations that eventually allow you to build this multi-location brand. A self-growth to a multi-location brand needs this to then leverage your, what we call EBITDA, your earnings before taxes and those things, to drive that. So I'm not going to get too deep into this, but this is what your practice evolution is all about. It's helping you identify the level that you want to be, like picking that target and then going into the mode we're about to go into, which is creation. Creation is that thing that allows us to maximize our greatest gifts. And our greatest gifts, you create every day. You're creating with patients, you're creating with team members, you're creating the feeling, you're creating the environment, you're creating the framework of a life. And so there's laws to creation that we have to understand. And number one, you've got to take the reality that you're the creator. You're the one that's creating your life. So if you're not happy with it, if you're not happy with the way that your practice is operating, if you're not happy with the way your personal life is going, when you make the realization and you accept the responsibility that my life is because I've created it this way, then life changes. Because you know the stories of Anne Franks and all of these other great people in the world that have been in crappy situations and have had unbelievable things done to them. And yet, when we have the right mindset, that we're still in control, like nobody can tap into this, we choose to be influenced. And believe me, there's going to be crappy things that happen to all of us. But we choose how to react. We choose how to create. And there's laws to this, and that is, what is the end that I'm working towards? Because again, like the great Stephen R. Covey says, begin with the end in mind. Where do you want this to go? Where do you want your life to go? Where do you want this practice to take you? You're building a vehicle to take you to a destination, so you have to choose, or you better choose, where this is taking you. And we want to very in detail create that. Because the only way we're going to then know how to get there is we have to have the materials to build it. It's very different building a single location than it is building a multi-location. It's very different building a single provider facility than it is building a multi-provider facility. It's very different building a cash practice than it is building an insurance-based practice. So you've got to decide where you're going so that we can identify the materials that we need to get there. And then, of course, who can help us? Who are we going to recruit? Because if your vision, your purpose is truly bigger than just you, which I pray that it is, then we need to attract the right people to help us build this. And that kind of sets the foundation for where we're going over this next 6 courses. So, laws of creation, accept the responsibility. You're where you are because you created it. And it's time to take the responsibility that we can do stuff. Now, as we go through this, because we're going to get into some pretty deep stuff here, I'm going to ask for your full attention. Like, put your cell phones aside. If you're using your cell phone, I hope it's only to take notes. Like, shut out everything for just the next hour. Give me your full attention, because I promise you, if you will, we're going to go on a journey now that's going to open up some concepts and create some epiphanies that need to be in place in order for the remaining 5 courses to all fit together. We've got to get in the drinks before we pour the ice into the cooler. So let's talk a little bit about mindset. Those of you who are providers who have been through school education understand the brain a little bit. And we talk about the primitive brain, which is controlled by the amygdala, compared to the midbrain, compared to the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex, as we know, is the creative brain. It's the analytical brain. It's the thought processing. We make very logical decisions within the prefrontal cortex. But the amygdala, as you know, is the primitive brain. The amygdala is the reactive brain. It really has very specific, like as you know, and those of you who aren't medical providers, those of you who are joining us who maybe are just new to this whole medical world, understand that the primitive brain thinks three things. Can I kill it? Can I eat it? Can I mate with it? That is the primitive brain. It's survival. And there's a lot of amazing things that the primitive brain does in our operating systems. And we're going to talk a little bit about this because this connects into human behavior. This connects into our relationships. This connects into communication. This connects into recognizing why we make the choices that we make. And so the other side of this coin is the prefrontal cortex. This is creativity, like I said. This is analytical, like I said. This is higher thinking. Now, that doesn't mean that one is good and one is bad, because it's not. Because if I'm getting attacked by a lion, I really want the primitive brain to take over. This is my survival, and it's really wired very well to keep me alive, versus the prefrontal cortex is very different. And there's physiological things that happen. There's brain chemistry involved. There's actually physiologically and blood flow that changes, and muscle function, and all of these things. And we need to understand this a little bit, because in this survival versus creative mode, we want to get into the creative mode today. Hopefully there's no lions attacking you currently, but it's controlled by dopamine. Dopamine is the reward mechanism within the brain. And there's certain things that control that. And then norepinephrine is the chemical that is the survival mechanism. And there's a lot of things that control and do things in order to keep us alive, the fight or flight mechanism. So dopamine, norepinephrine, the two brain chemicals that we're going to talk about today, because with dopamine, we know that more dopamine is released in anticipation of the reward. So this is the button that keeps getting triggered with the mice that want more reward, right? This is the addictive behavior. We keep pushing the button to reward us because it bathes the brain in this feeling of, man, I feel really good. And what's interesting in the science is that more dopamine is released in anticipation of the reward than actually getting the reward. For instance, on Thanksgiving morning, when we're preparing the meal, as we're preparing it, it's releasing dopamine because we're thinking of the reward of sitting down and eating that. But as you all know, man, that dinner goes fast. In 30 minutes, the food's consumed, and now we're sitting there bloated and we don't feel so great. So this is going to tie in to marketing and sales. This is going to tie into communication. This is going to tie into the way we talk to our team. So I just want you to connect this, that the release of dopamine, this feel-good mechanism, is higher in the anticipation of the reward than it is when we actually get it. Now again, this is eat with it, mate. This is that reward mechanism that comes from that. Now, too much dopamine, if we push that button long enough without the reward actually being delivered, what happens is it begins to create doubt. It begins to create fear. We actually break trust. And this is all going to tie together as we talk through the sales process. Now, norepinephrine, this is released underneath the tension phase. So we're in the fight or flight mechanism, norepinephrine is released to actually act. If we just had our brains bathed in dopamine, we would just kind of sit there and veg out and enjoy the feeling of it. But norepinephrine kicks in to actually get us to act. It creates action. This creates movement. And again, you can see how we could actually, if we learned how to stimulate norepinephrine, then we could actually get people to take action when we want them to take action. And too much of that, now we're moving into this fight or flight mechanism. So again, reward versus survival, creative versus staying alive. The lion comes at us, it's too much stress, we go into a reactive state. We don't think, right? You actually don't make too many logical decisions. You do survival. You go into the survival mechanism. So we want to be aware of these brain chemicals and how to use them. Now, I've got to make a disclaimer here, because as we go into this, the things I'm going to teach you can be used to manipulate. And that is not what this is about. This is understanding physiologically what's happening inside of a patient or a team member in the sales process. And as we go through this, we are going to intentionally understand what's happening in the brain chemistry of a patient to help them ethically make the right decisions. How many of you would agree with me that you, because of your understanding of health, probably make better health decisions than the average population? And how many of you would agree with me that if the average population understood what you understand about health, would make better decisions? So in the sales process, we actually become great educators. Like if you're selling a product, if you're selling a service, if you just educate highly on the benefits of that, you're stimulating dopamine because of that. Now, if you understand how to then stimulate norepinephrine, you can actually get people to act on that very desire. It's a really cool process. I'm going to tell you just a quick story. When I got out of high school, I went on a service mission. And, we didn't get a whole lot of training. I went on this service mission, and we were just taught, we're going to be working with a lot of poor people, and we're going to be working with a lot of people and serving them. And it's important, number one, that we love them. That's what we wanted to base all of our actions on. So as I'm serving on the service mission, I was in a really poor area. And, here I am, just a young man, 19 years old, left home for the first time, just learning how to really work with people. And in this area that I was working on, it was very, very high alcoholism, very high drugs, and it wasn't uncommon for these younger teenage kids, 13, 14, 15 years old, as they're now exploring their worlds, to get addicted to sniffing gases and getting addicted, which, as we know, stimulates the dopamine response, right? And that's why so many of these guys are stuck in the amygdala. They can't get to their higher brain because of this addiction that happens, this addiction cycle. So here we were in this area, and we kept having these two young girls, 14, 15 years old, that just kept following us and wanting, hey, what are you guys doing? Can we help? And they were attracted to us, right? Probably for the wrong reasons, but that's what the amygdala does. Can I eat it? Can I mate with it type reward? And here we were just trying to serve the people and be polite. And so here I am one day on the work site, and as we're doing our work, here were these two young girls just giggling, and we're trying to just kind of ignore them. But all of a sudden, in the middle of the work, I had a young teenage boy approach me. Now, where I was, the people aren't very tall; they're pretty short. And this poor young man, soaking wet, maybe would have been maybe 120 pounds. And I'm 6'3", I'm not a small guy. And all of a sudden, this young man came up to me and pulled out a knife and held it to my throat. And he said, "You leave my girlfriend alone." Well, here I am at 19, not really understanding psychology, not being very mature in my own ways. My initial reaction was what? In that moment, I had norepinephrine surging through my body. I wanted to grab his hand, pull it from my neck, and break his neck, right? That was my initial reaction. But in that moment, I had some training. And that training was love the people, do no harm, put their needs first. And I had something come over me that that was beyond my own being, because all I felt for that young man in that moment was love. All of a sudden, love squelched the norepinephrine response. And all I saw him was a young man underneath the influence of addiction trying to protect his property. So, how do we get people out of the amygdala? How do we get people into the higher level thinking? And it's with questions. And so I simply just asked him. I said, "Is this your girlfriend?" And of course, in some really rude words, he said, Yes, it is." And he pushes his hand tighter on my neck where the knife was. And I said, um, "Oh, that's wonderful. I just want you to know that we're doing our work, and they wanted to be a part of it. But I want you to know that I'm here. I'm not here for that. I'm here just to work. Um, she's yours. Why don't you take her and go buy her something nice?" And then asked him, "What does she mean to you?" I don't even know why I asked that question, but I asked the question, "What does she mean to you?" And of course, he let out some explicitives and some different things, and basically was saying, she's his property. I mean, talk about the amygdala response. And at that moment, I said, "Then go take her and show her what she means to you." And his hand comes off my neck, and he takes her, and they disappear. And there was a group of them. And oh my gosh, all of a sudden now I'm just, the relief comes over me. I didn't get my neck slit, and I was just able to go back to the work. But it's unbelievable the power of the amygdala when it's nurtured and cultured and those things. And in these moments, what we want to understand is that the human behavior has so much to do about attention, right? We're looking for attention. We're looking for the reward. We're looking for some of these things. And so dopamine is desire. When we see something, a really nice fancy car that is desirable, a really nice piece of jewelry that's desirable, looking a certain way, certain clothes, certain things, that stimulates the dopamine of desire. A smile, posture, the way we stand, these are the things that we can give our patients, that if we can give them something that they desire, we can actually trigger dopamine in the appropriate time. So this is not selling procedures. This is not trying to convince them that they need to go through procedures. Like, if we're in the middle of a treatment plan selling procedures, and we're going to get a lot more into this when we talk about sales, that's not desirable. What's desirable is what comes after the hard work. And what's desirable for you is a profitable, stable, balanced practice. When we sell that, then all the work that it takes to get there is magical. And we're going to break that down into the work that it takes, and it's going to become fun, and you're actually going to love it, and you're going to enjoy it. But it's the outcome that you're really desiring, and that's the dopamine response. That's what we want to trigger. So that's what comes after the treatment. So what will they be able to do again? So when we're actually talking to a patient, when we're triggering sales, we want to talk about what they cannot do in their current state, and we want to talk about what they can do when they correct this. How will it change their life? So this is dopamine. This is the language, because words are powerful. You see, words change state. State is the current level that we're operating in mentally. And it's very hard to tackle life when it's coming at us so fast when we're not in the higher level of thinking. And words trigger certain responses. So that's what we're trying to do here. This is their why. Why would they be willing to part with money? Why would they be willing to part with time? Why would they be willing to put in the work? Well, it's got to come back to their why. So this is the same thing for you going through this course. What is your why? Why are you willing to put in all this work and part with your money and spend time with me? Why are you creating this practice? Why are you building this vehicle? Because it's not just money, I'll tell you that. It's not money. There's a reason, and it's elevating our status. It's achieving something. It's something so innately in us that sometimes we don't know how to put it into words. In fact, I've got a 3-year-old, and so I know a little bit about it. In fact, I've got 4 kids. My youngest is 3, so I've been through this a few times. The development of the brain goes through phases, right? You understand this. And when a kid doesn't know how to communicate in words what they're feeling, what do they default to? They default to grunts. Ugh. You know, they get frustrated, they throw stuff, they break stuff, they revert back to what I just talked about with the amygdala, the very essence of it. They get reactive, they get frustrated, they get angry, trust is broken. So what we have to do in those moments is recognize that. Recognize that a child just doesn't have a developed brain yet, so we can't treat them like an adult brain. People underneath the addictive process, they may not have a healthy thought process system. And so we have to help them develop that. And there's actually some really cool things that happen with this. So norepinephrine is tension. Attention is the balance between desire and tension, right? What gets your attention? Well, again, a 3-year-old learns that they can get your attention by throwing a tantrum. And that's the reward, right? They got your attention. And they use a lot of tension, and we have a desire to get them to calm down, like, stop the stress, you're stressing me out. It's that balance that we're trying to create. So this program, we use phrases with our patients. This is the push-pull. This program might not be right for you. I bought a relatively expensive car a few years ago, most expensive car I had purchased. And it was a different selling experience than when I had bought a Nissan truck. I went into the showroom, and the very first thing that the sales guy says to me is, "Hey, welcome to our sales. What's catching your eye? Let's take it for a test drive." And then he says to me, "Not everybody can afford our vehicles." Well, what do you think that did to my amygdala? I immediately was like, "Well, I can afford it." My ego raises this high. Again, this is why I'm teaching you these things, but in a righteous way, ethically. We don't want to manipulate a patient unethically. You got to be very careful with this, because there are worlds out there that are addicting people to really, really bad things using this very science. But when it's used properly, man, we can help people make really great decisions that will change their lives forever. So this is the push-pull concept. You may not have time to invest in this program right now. Now, I know a lot of you have shared that with me. I don't have the time. I don't have the time. I don't have the time. Well, we're going to help you create the time, I promise. So not everyone qualifies for our programs. These are the words that create tension, right? Desire, tension. And again, this is what it is. Attention is desire plus tension. When we learn to become masters at balancing this ethically, we control the sales process. We control the creative process. And as you begin interacting with people and human behavior, this is the essence of human behavior. And I want to dive into a second of why we do what we do and how this all kind of ties together now. So think about this. When we wake up in the morning, our default state doesn't immediately just go to creation, right? We're looking for a quick dopamine rush. And some people find it in caffeine. Some people find it in checking their email. Did somebody communicate with me? Feeling needed, by the way, is a dopamine rush. So we check our email, we check our social media, we check. If you don't end up checking, if you do end up checking social media and you're not needed, and you see somebody else's life that's better than yours, it actually then triggers other things, which is disappointment and depression. So think about that. think about that the normal human behavior, the default state is the amygdala, is the reactive state. So that's the primitive brain. What's interesting, though, is that in the primitive brain is hardwired this gut feeling. This actually does connect the brain to our stomach, and that's why we call it a gut response. And in reality, the amygdala is extremely intuitive. This is where intuition comes from, you guys. This is when somebody's presenting something to you that you can kind of feel. You feel if it's right. And this is where there's been some amazing books written all about making decisions and trusting your gut. The amygdala has the intuitive ability of the BS meter. And if somebody is selling you too hard, it feels it, and all of a sudden trust is broken. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. You know, my wife and I, when we were engaged, we were getting ready to plan the wedding, and I was still young. I was just not in a great financial state at the time, and we had some electricians that were building out our building, and they came to us with an investment opportunity. An unbelievable investment opportunity. And in 90 days, they were telling me that they could double our money. Well, we had some money set aside for the wedding, and you know, it sounded too good to be true. I didn't really trust it, but they did a great job at desire, like keep triggering desire and showing me evidence of people that had doubled their money in 90 days. So against our better judgment, the gut, which we felt, dopamine won. Dopamine was strong enough that the desire to start our lives on a good financial note was so powerful. So we did. We gave them our money. We gave electricians our money because it was their brother-in-law who had this investment company. Well, sure enough, within 25 days, the brother-in-law's company gets seized for fraud, and they had been running a Ponzi scheme. And so that money that we had given now was tied up. We couldn't get it back. We couldn't demand it back. And we lost that money. And so now we're going into our wedding without the money to really pay for the wedding. And what a disaster. I didn't trust the intuition part of the amygdala. So there's a balance here that we've got to be aware of. We've got to feel or be aware of what we're feeling, and not give in to this concept of primitive brain. So again, it's always looking for the reward, always looking to be triggered for that dopamine release and that reward. But it is also the balance of survival. That's the primitive state. So how do we balance the intuition with the behavior that then the amygdala can get into the reactivity? So that's why you see really highly intuitive people deal with a lot of addiction. And I'll tell you, it's probably 8 years ago now, I was seeing some patients, and all of a sudden, my front desk came to me and said, "Hey, there's a gentleman here that would like to give you his resume," which was a little weird because I didn't have a hiring, we weren't looking for new employees, so to speak. Actually, we're always looking for good new employees. But anyway, I went up and I met this gentleman, and he was dressed nice. He was young, but I had a few minutes, so I took him into our consult room and I sat down and I interviewed him. And what was interesting about this gentleman, he was very upfront with me. He said, "Dr. Frogley, I actually am just getting over a methamphetamine addiction. I've been clean for 3 months, and I want to get my life back in order. I want to dedicate my life to helping other people with addiction recovery, and I just want to get into the health field. And I don't know why, but every time I drive by your building, I feel pulled to your building." He highly intuitive, right? But battling severe addiction in his younger days. Well, I could tell this whole story for an hour because it's pretty incredible, but long story short, this young man stayed clean, and he dedicated his life to my practice and Dr. Worsley in our practice, and helped us grow in ways. I watched him grow as a young man. It became an amazing relationship. He dedicated his life to studying brain chemistry and recovery of addiction. And now watching him go out, get his degree, and open up his own addiction recovery facility is incredible. He's leading a team now and helping people with addiction recovery. And that's the gut. That's the intuition. Those are the gifts that come with this amygdala nurturing. And so highly intuitive, highly addictive, there's a balance there, and we've got to be very careful. We've got to be very, again, aware of it. Now, how do we activate the prefrontal cortex? So if we feel the reactive brain taking over, how do we get out of it? Like, how do we get to making good decisions? And that's the 3-year-old, right? We ask them questions. And people who are in a reactive state, we have to ask them questions. Questions get people out of the reactive state. The other huge way is showing them gratitude. Telling them how grateful you are for them, showing them with actions how grateful we are for them. That gets people out of the reactive state. Making an action plan. If you're drowning and you're feeling overwhelmed and all of these things, if we make an action plan and we organize, not only does it get us out of our reactive brain and into the higher level prefrontal cortex, when we then work with people to create an action plan, a roadmap, it makes all the difference in the world. And then we can create. Now we're ready to create. That's where the creative brain lies. It's really hard to create underneath reactivity. It's powerful to create when we're in that prefrontal cortex. So one of the things that you're going to be getting, and I put the link in the chat box, this link is designed for you to create. And we're going to break down your systems, and some of you are familiar with this. These are the basic systems. We actually can grow this to about 12 systems, but this is categorizing your practice into manageable things, because our lives are made up of so many things. They're made up of personal things. They're made up of keeping physically fit and our health. They're made up of mentally fit and keeping that emotional. It's made up of nutrition and what we're putting into our bodies. And then, of course, we wear this hat of business owner and hiring people and all of these things that can be extremely overwhelming. But if we have a way to measure the outcome of a system quickly, then we can quickly assess where our attention needs to be. Desire, intention, attention, desire, intention. We desire each one of these. So if you look at this chart, at the bottom of each system, you'll see a purpose, a product, a KPI, and a goal. Every system that we create in the practice has to have a purpose. That purpose has to produce something. We have to measure what it's producing and intentionally have a goal of how to get it there. So every system you put in place has to fit in this. These are your drinks before you pour in the ice. These are your core boulders, the foundation, the rock bed that allow that. So if we're in a meeting, what is the outcome? The desired outcome of that meeting? It's outcome and assessment of everything that we do with patients, with systems, with team members, with a conversation. When we become more aware of what we're trying to create and what the current state is. So when I'm facing a patient, where is their mind? What state are they in? Are they in pain and they cannot think in the prefrontal cortex because they're stuck in the amygdala? How do we walk them through the road to make a better decision? When we're dealing with an employee and they're dealing with something in their personal life and they're having a train wreck, maybe they're going through a divorce, is that going to affect your day? Absolutely. So we become aware, and what do we want the outcome to be? So every system has to have some way to quickly assess it. When you put in a nutritional system for your own nutrition, what's the desired outcome? you make decisions of what goes in your mouth based upon the outcome that you want that system to have. Now, if the desired outcome is just to feel good, then you're going to probably be eating a lot of sugar and sweets, fats that when we combine them destroy the body. But when we have this desired outcome of health, of function, of healing, right, it changes everything. So when we break down these systems into these fundamental things, we can get very clear. So you're going to download this, and then you are going to customize this for yourself. Now there's a couple tabs on this worksheet that we're going to talk about, because you now, as the creator of this destiny that you're going to, these are 5 leadership traits that I think Mike Myatt caught really well. He's a great leadership trainer. If you haven't spent time with Mike Myatt's stuff, I put his website on here. Spend some time on it, because leaders have to be purpose-based cause. What is the purpose of why you're creating your vision? And this goes back to the why. So let me just share a quick story with you, and I hope this isn't getting too personal, but this is a little bit personal about my life, because I grew up the youngest of 10 kids. Can you imagine that, being the baby of 10 kids? It's crazy. So I grew up with a mom who was amazing. I mean, my parents were unbelievable individuals. They're both passed away now, but my time with them was incredible. And my mom, interestingly enough, was a workhorse. That woman was never sitting still. She was always, if she was sitting watching TV, we had a massive garden, so she was shelling peas, or she was preparing food to be canned or frozen or whatever that is. And so every day we were on a very strict schedule of getting up, cleaning the house, working the garden for 3 hours before we could go play with friends. We all started working at about 8 years old, delivering newspapers. We all had to play 2 musical instruments. We all had to sing. We all had to, yeah, I could go on and on and on. Well, growing up in that environment is highly, highly tension. There's a lot of tension to be great. And my mom, interestingly enough, was really, really good at telling everybody else how great you were, but not so much telling you how great you were. She was better at telling you how great you should be. And so combined with that, and then hearing about how great the other siblings were, you kind of grow up with like, am I ever going to be good enough? Am I ever going to be great? Well, bless her heart, when I really, as I understood psychology as I got older and worked through some counseling, which I'm not afraid to admit that all of us have been through, I think, or should go through, I realized that my mom grew up on a farm. And she was the oldest of 5, and the oldest 3 were girls. Well, she grew up with a mom and dad, again, that were highly, highly motivated by work, right? It was a potato farm. They had to deliver potatoes. Well, what I learned about, and I never met him because he was passed away before I was born, was that my grandfather was a quiet guy. He never expressed very much love to my mom. So the way she felt love was she tried to be the producer on the farm. She was the oldest worker, which in most cultures would be a boy. So she was so busy working like a boy, not to say women and men don't work the same hardness, but this is back in the 30s. So very different culture, very different mindset back then. And she was always trying to please her dad by the volume of work. So we grew up getting our value by work. It was never purpose-based work. We didn't always talk about to what end were we working for. It was to work for the sake of work. Well, here's the problem with work, is when was the work done? Well, when you grow up on a large property with a massive garden, fruit trees, you have talents to develop, is the work ever done? And so it was just work for the sake of work. It wasn't that fulfilling because we didn't know what we were working towards. And this is the purpose-based cause. As I grew up and began really looking at why do I do what I do? Why am I building what I build? It wasn't for money. You know, money provides security, and that was important. But I was willing to take money. Dr. Wurzler and I got together and decided that we wanted to, our purpose-based cause was we desperately wanted to help providers grow profitable, healthy, stable practices because we want to connect true healthcare together. And that's not owned by one profession, by one providership. And so when you're building your vision, it's got to have purpose. People have to be first in that. It's not all about you. It's showing up to serve them. And this was difficult as an early provider because I was giving so much to my patients that I would then go home and have a hard time showing up with enough energy to give to my wife and children. So we have to have a framework and consciously decide how much can I give before it becomes the tank's empty and I don't have enough to give to the other areas of my life. And we have to set boundaries, and we have to have, again, systems in place for that. We have to develop awareness as a leader, no blind spots. Awareness is so powerful. When I first started learning how to public speak, what happens is they first teach you to start recording yourself, and they teach you about pause words. I just did it. It creates a pause in our speaking that allows us to consciously think about what's next. And when we start public speaking in the beginning, we use a lot of pause words. Well, when I started becoming aware of that, it was easy then to remove pause words out of my speaking. Same concept in your leadership skills and the running of a practice. See, putting in systems, putting in Blue IQ creates awareness of the level of performance of the systems. You have to have awareness. If you're going to lead the team, you have to be aware. You can't become dependent. Too many of you are delegating things that can't be delegated because it's not their business. It's not their practice. You have to own it. Now, if you do delegate it and lead them, then you're aware if they're not on the right track. So that's where a lot of these pieces come together. We have to shun complexity. I'm guilty of this. I make things way too complex. Because again, big vision. I want to get to a great place. Get personal. You hear that phrase, it's not personal, it's just business. Well, business is personal, but personal with boundaries, right? We want to be very specific in our interactions, that they have purpose, they have intention, and they're not misread. It's caring about people and elevating them to a higher state. But again, staying away from the amygdala's desire to cross relationship boundaries. But getting personal, business is personal. We have to hire the right people to do the right jobs. So if you're going to create this vision, you have to become inside what it takes to create the vision. And this is one of my favorite quotes from Wayne Dyer. He says, when you squeeze an orange juice comes out, because that's what's inside. When you are squeezed, what comes out is what's inside of you. Desire, tension. You're going to have tension loaded upon you. If you chose to run and own a practice, the higher you want to climb on that ladder, the better your internal environment better be mastered. Because if you're controlled by the amygdala and you're reactive and you're snapping at people because too much tension releases too much norepinephrine and you're in the reactive state, then you're going to have a hard time leading people. You're going to have a hard time being aware because the amygdala is not as aware, it's reactive. So what is coming out of you underneath your highest levels of tension? So now, vision creation. Walt Disney has done an amazing job, and they've produced a vision statement. Our vision is to be one of the world's leading producers and providers of entertainment and information. Using our portfolio of brands to differentiate our content, services, and consumer products, we seek to develop the most creative, innovative, and profitable entertainment experience related to the projects of the world. And I would say they're doing a great job of that. Wow, what an empire. We look at Tesla, a little shorter. Their goal is not to create the most valuable, profitable car company, right? It's to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy. That's a purpose-based cause. Do you see that? Your vision cannot be centered around money. That's not what this is about. Money is a byproduct. And if what's inside of you is anger, frustration, the more money you get, the more your money will represent you in anger and tension and selfishness. If you're a charitable person, the more your money will represent you in charity. The more you can do in greatness. We can do things, but money is powerless without you. You're the driver. It's you. You're the vision creator. You cannot delegate vision creation. Do you understand that? You have to create the vision of where this company, where this practice, where this product is going. So it's a purpose-based cause, Starbucks, to inspire and nurture the human spirit. That's first and foremost. That's powerful. That motivates me. Now they do it by one person, one cup, one neighborhood at a time. I think that's pretty comprehensive. Practice evolution. This is my purpose, to build a community of providers who believe in truth healthcare and help them build profitable, purpose-driven empires. Now, your empire might be one location. That's okay. That's your empire. I want you achieving your highest level of status, your highest level of creation. Again, the debacle that people get in is when they have more creation inside of them that they're not living up to. That's what we call miserable. My purpose is to help you unlock this and get to the full measure of your creation. So, your vision statement. Words are powerful, right? In the beginning was the Word. Words create power. Words create excitement. And this is where we start off with what, in a word bubble, come up with the one word that is the core of your vision. So this is just an example we did with a dentist, confidence, and then we go through words that are powerful in their culture that they're trying to create. So restore confidence. You see, giving somebody a new smile isn't just making them pretty. It makes them more confident. Passion. We want to be passionate about it. I believe passion drives us. That is a righteous power of the amygdala. To connect, we want to connect with our community. To light people's light, to elevate them to a higher status. I don't know why I have two brights in there, sorry. Community, leader, they want to be a leader in the community. So they came up with this. We are passionate about restoring confidence to our community, one bright smile at a time. Our patients will not be held back from achieving their dreams. We will become the leader both in our technology and patient satisfaction. That's a vision statement. That's inspiring. Like, your vision statement has to get people excited to get out of bed. Because if we're going to hire the right people, they have to be inspired by this vision. Here's another one. Passionate. Again, restore, reach, connect, clear, elevate, live, community. Again, we are passionate about helping our community live without neuropathy pain. So there's a neuropathy pain clinic. We commit to becoming the leaders with 15 clinics in the Dallas area. So they want to open up 15 clinics. They're very specific and they're passionate. They want to elevate people. They want to help them get out of pain so they can live. So that's your assignment on that download that you download from the Google Word document. You'll notice one of the tabs, you're going to have a space for your core word. And then you're going to list words that are the other core words that build that. So this is going to be your assignment, is you have to write your mission statement, or your vision statement, not your mission statement. Your mission statement are who you are to the world. Your vision statement is your guidance to you and your team. They're two different things. We're more worried right now about vision statement. Okay, now, we want to take the vision statement and we want to set a standard. And this is what I love about our formation. And if you live outside of America, I apologize. I am an American, so I'm a little proud of this. And that is the standard that the Pledge of Allegiance sets for us. that our national anthem sets for us. There's powerful, powerful words within the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge my allegiance to the flag. And there's words in there that are powerful, the core values of what this country was built on. We the people. I mean, just incredible, inspired documents. Well, core values is the same thing for your vision to become real. You see, these are the core standards that you're going to be using to create the standard for you. You're going to make all of your decisions based upon these core values. These need to be somewhere where you see them daily. You're going to hire and fire based upon these standards. And the core values for the team are going to help them set goals, help them decide, is my behavior today in alignment with the core values of this vehicle that's being built? And they completely guide our decisions on what we do on a daily basis. You see, when we compartmentalize the systems of the practice and we have purpose-driven outcomes, then we have standards that are driving the level of accountability and performance within the practice. We have a game changer. And if you feel like you're babysitting employees, this is what you're missing. You tried to put the ice in first. You can't do that. These are the core foundational beverages in the bottom of the cooler before you put the ice in. So, core values. This is just some companies that, they fell in love with these words. Stewardship. Man, that's a powerful word. The best people. That means when they do a job interview, they're making sure the people are great before they hire them. Client value creation. For every client they bring on board, they're going to create value for them. Jumping over to American Express, quality, integrity, teamwork, respect for people, good citizenship. You see, they're worried about their communities. They wanted to be engaged in the whole, all the way down to the community level. A will to win, personal accountability, right? Those are core values. Coca-Cola, leadership, the future, courage to shape a better future. I think that's powerful. To be able to shape the future of something is incredible. Collaboration, integrity, be real, accountability, passion, diversity, quality. These are all core words that you need to brainstorm that resonate with you. Do you see why you can't delegate this? Because these are coming from your creation, your spirit. Do you see what's more important, the cell or the organ? What's more important, the organ or the system it belongs to in the human body? What's more important, the system or the whole being? What's more important, the whole being or the family it belongs to? What's more important, the family or the community it belongs to? What's more important, the community or the entire ecosystem it belongs to? You see, it all connects. How do you get the cells right, you get the organ right. You get the organ right, you get the system right. You get the system right, you get the being right. Well, going back to the gut connects to spirit because it's raw. And when kept in balance, we can use our amygdala to intuitively connect to the higher brain and drive creation. You see, there's nothing more beautiful than the experience I got to participate in, let's face it, more watch, and that was my wife giving birth to our 4 children. Now, I watched her. There's nothing more visceral, there's nothing more innate than a woman giving birth. I mean, the pain, the whole process is unbelievable. But talk about a visceral process. And to be able to feel that and participate in that and see the outcome of that brand new baby, and watching her hold our babies for the first time and their skin touching on skin. That's why we had to create core values for our family. That's why we had to create vision for our family. I didn't want it to be accidental. I didn't want it to be just by mistake. You see, you guys, you're creating a life. You're creating a vehicle that's going to take you to a life. You got to own that. And you have to do it with so much intention that this becomes your daily rituals, is engaging in this, because this is what creates the culture. So once we've created this vehicle that's going to serve people, who do we want to attract to serve? What are those people? And there's a very simple exercise that you can go through. And again, this is going to connect our marketing and our messaging in the future. But you need to identify age range. What is there a sex, one or the other, that we're reaching? In healthcare, women make more of the decisions. Some of you on this training are not in healthcare, you're other businesses, and so you've got to connect with who is the buyer. How do we connect with them? What qualities do these people have that we want to attract? I don't want to attract idiots. I don't want to attract jerks. So how do we attract the right people? We go through the age range. Oh, actually, that copied wrong. Sorry. Let's go into what conversation, what challenges are these people facing? What's the conversation in their head that they're struggling with? What are their pain points? And how do we enter that conversation so that our messaging resonates? That they're like, hey, how do they know what I was thinking? We're gonna work on that. And of course, what are the resources that your ideal patient is getting information from? How are they educating themselves? Where are they going to educate themselves? You know, many of you I found either at workshops, or I found through common, referral sources, or I found through a blog, or I found through some place that you were looking for information. And somehow our messaging resonated, and you're here. So you're doing the same. Where does your ideal patient go for their information? Is it blogs? Is it YouTube? Is it groups? Is it books? Is it magazine? Is it live events? Okay, that's how we create. So you're going to take this, and part of your homework is to identify exactly what are these specifics that you're trying to attract to serve. And then your brand, your message. This is something getting extremely focused on your look, your feel that you're creating. You see, too many of you are using different fonts in too many places, right? We want to elevate the professionalism here. Too many of you are still using a Yahoo or a Gmail email address. For branding's sake, all of your messaging should come from Dr. Blank at blank dental office, or blank health and wellness office, or blank. It's $5 for Google to host your email addresses. It's nothing. $5 a month. It's worth it, because again, this is elevating your brand, your font, your colors, your feeling. This is part of your creation. Get serious about mastering this. These are the things you have to master. Your website. Stop telling people what you do. Tell them why you do it. Again, Simon Sinek preaches this all day long, as a master at this, way better than I am. Listen to his talks if you haven't heard that. But you got to tell them why you're doing this. What life are you creating for them? What are you passionate about doing? It's not just fixing people's smiles. It's not just getting rid of people's knee pain. It's not just getting rid of people's stuff. What you're doing is helping them restore a life. When your messaging represents that on everything you do, you will attract your right customers. One of the great places to do this for cheap, way cheaper than my companies can do it for you, is 99 Designs. www.99designs.com. You can have 100 designers working for you for pennies on the dollar. I mean, it's a contained price. So I highly encourage you to if you don't have your brand matching your vision and your core values, spend some time on this. Get this right, please, please, please. So what is culture? Culture is made up of this: your vision. When your vision has purpose driven, your why, when you've mastered that, then the core values become pretty easy, because you're creating this feeling, this environment. Your organization. It's now easy to build the organization because it's driven by vision, purpose, and core values. We have systems now that run the organization. Each system has a very specific purpose and product, and it's easy to measure. We now can put the right people in because we're attracting the right people to the right core, the right purpose. And our goal is to find great people who will adopt our vision as their own. You see, they're willing to spend their time, spend their energy to drive a vision that aligns with their vision. It's so powerful when you attract those right people. So in the interview process, we're communicating. How do these people communicate? We master communication. And part of your training through the 6-week course is going to help you master some communication. And when you do master that, you implement the rituals, the daily activities that hold the team together, and the rituals that the community around you feel is what creates culture. And this is something you need to master. Because I promise you, you get this right, everything else becomes easy, you guys. Everything else will become easy. You just have to get this right. And I can't express this. This is still stuff I'm focused on daily in my own companies. So here's your homework before we open this up for some question and answer. You need to download your organizational chart and just review it. You can start customizing. You can, you're going to have to add some columns and different things like that, depending on how new you are or familiar you are with organization. You're going to work on your vision. Your vision needs to be written before the next course. You need to identify your core values. They need to resonate, because we're going to use these to build the brand. So I want you to review your brand. Does it match your vision and core values? And if it doesn't, we need to do some rebranding. Your brand may need to be elevated. It may need to be updated. Maybe you created it 10 years ago. It needs a fresh face. You guys care enough to get this right, because this is your company. This is your practice. This is your business. This is what you're spending your time doing. And I promise you again, I give you my word that I will take you on a journey to create the most profitable, exciting, effective vehicle to help you get to your vision. I'm dedicating my time and my life to that. I give you my everything to do this. Now, to prepare for our next training, we're going to go through and connect the psychology of the amygdala, the primitive brain, and how we now ethically use some of these tactics to help connect marketing and sales, to sell great services and products to our customers, our patients. We're going to connect your marketing to your phone scripts and your exam and your case presentation. We're going to go over advanced marketing tracking and how to make sure that we know if it's working right. This is intentional marketing, and how to know if it's actually working. And so that's the stuff we're going to be going over. I do want to open up some time for some question and answers. We went a little long, but hopefully this is valuable enough to you, and it's setting the stage for everything that we're going to be going over here in the future. So we'll spend a few minutes with question and answers, and then one of the things that I'm going to send you is a link to another private group. So some of you are on the Blue IQ private group for learning how to use software. We're creating another private group that's Practice Evolution private group, where we can engage in questions and conversations related to these things. Do you understand why you are not allowed to be in that group prior to this training? Because we're now talking about things that most people don't think about on the daily basis. And I want to be able to have conversations in that Facebook group, which will be the Practice Evolution group. I'll send you a link to it. But that's where we can talk about these things in depth between now and next training. And because I know you're going to have a lot of questions and maybe even need some one-on-one help with some of these things. So please, let's dive into our question and answers. I'm going to see if I can figure out how I can bring up the chat box so I can actually see. Okay, so go ahead, and I've got the questions brought up here. So if you have questions about anything that we've covered, please feel free to ask them now. And I just put in here, if you don't know where the chat box is, I just put in here, post questions here. And if you don't have any questions, that's not a problem. But it's in that Zoom chat if there's anything you want to ask. And again, you can email me at cfrogley. In fact, let me put my email address in here for anybody that needs. Maybe these questions are too personal. We went through some heavy stuff today. Hey, Sheila. Sheila's got a question. I'm glad you made it because I know you guys were busy seeing patients today. Oh, this said no questions. I must say tremendous info, my friend. Thank you, thank you. In fact, I would love feedback. So if this was meaningful stuff, please, 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 please share this. I just got a question. Can we rewatch this? Yes, you're going to get a link to all of these trainings. You're going to get eventually in a private library, you'll have access to this for life. So I think that'll be good. So getting great feedback here. Linda Anderson, thank you. Bless your heart. Says, thank you so much for today. Awesome, eye-opening, time well spent. I appreciate that feedback. This is the reward, guys. This is my dopamine rush. Give me a little dopamine fix here. Again, the stuff we're going to be building on this is why this foundation is so powerful, because there's so many things we're going to now layer on top of this and start by the end of this. You can now fill in the gaps with all the daily activities because those daily activities have a purpose behind them. So it's going to be pretty exciting. Okay, well, again, thank you for being with us today, and we will see you on the next training. It's the same login, same link, and we'll be rocking and rolling. So thanks again for being here, and we will. I'll look for any questions in between. I'll be sending you some more links between now and then. And gosh, this has been fun. Appreciate all you guys. Talk to you soon.